Monday. Happy Monday to you all. So, the topic that I want to talk to you today is the topic that I was discussing with one of my amazing clients, the topic of avoiding conflicts. And I feel like a lot of humanitarians are in this space of avoiding conflict and don't know what to do about it. And I would like to propose some of the ways that you can look at it and solve for it if you wanted to. So the way that I was discussing with one of my clients, and the example I want to give you is that she was telling me that she avoids conflict, and then we were discussing why that is the case is because of her fears about what conflict means and also what it means to her personally, right? So her idea of what conflict means is that it's something very bad, it's very destructive, that we shouldn't get into it, and if we do, then it will all fall apart. And the other part that she was thinking about when she was thinking about conflict is something like, I'm not being liked. The other person does not like me, and therefore it becomes so personal, and therefore she wants to hide and avoid conflict at any cost, even though that means that she's not really being honest with herself and with the other person in terms of discussing things openly, even if it leads to conflict, right? And we were discussing what we can do about it, about this situation. So if you are in this situation, I would like for you to think about avoiding conflict is actually an action that we take, right? And the reason why we take that action is because we are afraid. Uh, we're afraid of what's going to happen. We're afraid of the consequences of it. We're afraid of our abilities, of whether we can handle it. And the reason why we're afraid is we have a lot of misconceptions or a lot of fears, acquired fears, maybe from other adults when we were children, about what conflict means or what it can do to us as persons, and therefore we don't even go and discuss things with the other person. We don't make things. We don't remain on the topic that we're discussing. Instead, we tend to make it very personal. So, what I would like for you to think about is what are your thoughts about conflict? What do you make it mean? How do you feel when you're thinking about, oh my God, this is a conflict? And what do you also think about yourself in relation to the conflict, right? So, what do you think you will be able to do or not be able to do in relation to conflict? And the reason why I think that we need to really think about it honestly about this, what conflict means to us in our lives. And I think you may have been already introduced to the idea that conflict does not necessarily have to be a bad thing. It can also be a good thing, but I don't think we like genuinely really believe that that's the case, many of us, and therefore we try to avoid it at any cost. Or even if we go into it a little bit, then we back out and then we don't really finish the conversation that we could have in order to have that, in order to clarify certain things, right? So here I will not really be talking about whether conflict is a good thing or a bad thing, but I really wanted to talk about is though the consequences of avoiding conflict, right? So one of the I think main consequences of avoiding conflict is we keep reinforcing the message that reinforcing our fears, but also reinforcing the message that there is no room or space for two diverse opinions to take place on the same topic, right? So we're basically saying that in order for us to avoid conflict, we will just hold our opinion to ourselves and we will not really say it. We will not really be honest with the other person or with ourselves, and therefore we don't speak up. And I think this is one of the biggest consequences that I see that is very adverse to us. And the other consequence is that we keep reinforcing that we don't really trust ourselves and abilities to handle that conflict in a way that we bring that to a resolution, right? So therefore, we just keep reinforcing that, oh, we're not good at it, or we can't really handle it, or we can't be trusted, or conflicts are so destructive. Whatever it is, we just keep reinforcing those misconceptions about conflict, or about our understanding of conflict, or about ourselves in relation to that conflict. The other consequences that I see that is so contrary to many humanitarians believe, which is in the equality, in the speaking up for our truths, standing by our truths, for our rights. And when it comes to conflict, we're actually doing the contrary, which is that because of fearing the other person, or because of fearing not being liked by the other person, we don't then say all the things that we actually want to say, or stand by our truths of what it means to us. And therefore, we're not really defending, or we're not really standing by our position in articulating that. And therefore, we just stay complacent to what the other person is saying, or we don't really object to the other person's opinion, and therefore we don't really promote diversity of opinions, right? We don't really promote standing by our truths and standing by our rights, and pursuing our rights, and we don't really do that, which is actually a very dire to many of our hearts as humanitarians. And therefore, we don't really promote fairness. We don't really do that because our views in that moment is not heard, or our views in that moment is not standing on the equal standing with the other person's. And also the question that you can ask yourself is that really worth not being honest, not promoting the diversity of opinions, diversity of views, and not standing by our truths? Is that really worth doing that um, in the name of harmony? I think for many of us, including myself, that I grew up with this idea of everything needs to be harmonious, relationships need to be harmonious, and if it's not, then something's gone wrong. And is that really worth hiding our truths and not standing by our truths, and not defending our rights because of that harmony? Is that really worth it, right? So this is the question you can ask yourself. And also, like, all the consequences that you see based on avoiding conflict, is that all worse to have those consequences because of that one thought, that is, I'm not going to be liked if I speak up, or it will be all destructive, and it will all go like fall apart if I don't say what I really want to say? Is that really worth it? So, if you see that you don't want to be avoiding conflicts, or even maybe it will not even be a conflict, but because we're so afraid of even the term conflict, I think that we don't even go into the discussions of the topic. Then here are the things that you can actually start doing in practical terms, and see what comes up for you, right? So first thing I would love for you to think about is thinking about what are your thoughts about conflict, and if they are around scary, or around something negative, then start questioning, is that really true, or can this really be true, or any other way that we can also look at conflict and resolve conflicts as well, and what could be the benefits of resolving those conflicts as well. So think about your thoughts, your beliefs about conflict, not the ones that, like, theoretically other people have said about conflicts, but what you really immediately think about, what you really feel about when you think about conflict, right? So the way that I think about conflicts, I used to think about conflicts is, like I said, that, oh my God, it's something so horrible that I can't even think about, or I would be so scared of conflict or I would be so scared that I would shut down. These would be my major feelings around conflict, right? Because of the upbringing that I said I had. So therefore, my feelings around conflict was always so much fear that I freeze, so much fear that I like even avoid that person as much as possible, so much fear that I even forget all the things that I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it, or so much fear that I don't even know how to articulate my words, even if I was given an opportunity, right? So these are the feelings that I have about conflict. So for you, what are they? What are the feelings you have around conflict? And what are the thoughts behind those fears that you have, for instance? So, and then once you realize some of the thoughts behind those fears, like that it's so bad and it can be so destructive and I'm not liked and all the other things, then think about the consequences of that fear of those beliefs in your life, right? So, what are the things that you're doing? In those moments, what are the things you're not doing in those moments? So, some of the things that I said already, what I was doing, but also what I would like for you to think about is what are the things you're not doing, right? So what are things that I wasn't doing in those circumstances or in those feelings of fear is things that I wasn't doing. As I said, I wasn't telling my truths. I wasn't standing up for my truths. I wasn't really ready to discuss that matter with the other person because of not trusting myself and also not trusting the other person that we can handle conflict even if it comes to that and we can resolve conflict afterwards. I wasn't giving myself a chance to do that. And that's why think about what are the things you're not doing, right? And then the consequences of it. What is the result that's creating for you in your life if you keep avoiding that conflict? Right. So the result that was creating for me is just keep reinforcing my fear that conflict is bad, that I can't handle it, that I can't trust myself, that I can't trust the other person, that I can't really trust that we can stay on the topic instead of making it personal. I just kept reinforcing it. Now, once you realize all of this, then you can also go to how do you want to approach conflict, right? How do you want to intentionally approach conflict? And does it really need to be something negative, or you can also use it as an opportunity to have a very like let go or open conversation, honest conversation to say things out loud to the other person the way that we maybe wanted to, trusting that we will then find a solution. Or even if we're not willing to do that, getting ready for it or preparing ourselves for it, for that conversation, we can always approach it that way. But in order to do that, though, we need to think about conflict in the way that gives us and maybe an opportunity to have the conversation openly, honestly, and also without making it personal. And I think that's very important, is as long as we keep making it personal, meaning that, oh, I'm being attacked or I'm not being liked or this person hates me, I hate this person. If we're on that um, mindset, then it's very difficult to have a conversation where conflict leads to something that is useful for both sides. So that's why if we're willing to talk on the topic, whatever the topic is, right? Especially at workplace, then how are we wanting to feel around that conversation, around that frank conversation, frank exchange of different views, frank exchange of views where we are understanding that there might be two very adverse or opposite views, and we are willing to have the space for both views to coexist without making one less than the other. And so therefore, how do you want to approach it about approach conflict, right? So the way that I have done so far is that I have changed my attitude around conflict and not fearing it, and instead just thinking about what if this is also another way to communicate with each other without really constraining myself or constrain or hiding my truth, but rather um, willing to tell my truth. This is an opportunity for me to tell my truth and stand by it, and at the same time, trusting myself that I have the ability to hold space for the other opposite view to be there, and also reinforcing my belief that I don't need to seek for harmony the whole time, and I'm okay to have different views coexist, where I don't need to diminish the other person's views in that moment. I know it's a very challenging thing to do, but I have been practicing, and I would like for you to also consider if you would like to do that, because the cost of not doing that, I find for myself at least, and the way that I see for my clients, is the cost of not doing it is us keep being dishonest, us keep not speaking up, us not keep not promoting diversity of opinions, diversity of views, and not standing by our truths. I find those are high cost to pay for avoiding conflict, high cost to pay for the belief that I'm not going to be liked in the end or whatever, because I rather not be liked yet standing by my truths than keep wanting to be liked and therefore not say all the things that are important to me. So that's why, if you're someone who's avoiding conflict and who's struggling with it and who doesn't know what to do, think about all the ways that you're feeling about conflict and all the consequences you're having around it. And if you don't like those consequences, then how do you want to change it? How do you want to approach it differently? How do you want to feel around it? How do you want to, what do you want to believe about yourself and abilities handling conflict? And what kind of results you want to steer this conflict towards with the other person, trusting the other person's going to do that with you. So, my dears, I hope that this was helpful for you to think about what to do with conflict, and how to not avoid it anymore if you don't want to, and rather use it as an opportunity for you to practice being you, telling your truth, speaking up your truth, standing by your truth, even if it's very challenging conversation, even if it's a very difficult conversation to have. Have an amazing week ahead. And if you want to work on this, please come coach with me. I would love to help you figure things out around conflict, around telling your truth, standing by your truth, and most importantly, trusting yourself and your abilities that you can handle it, and you can even grow stronger in the process of being able to focus on the topic and not making it personal, so that you can get better results out of it. Thank you so much. See you very